So let's start. I would like to welcome Mr. Myles Pilling. He came all the way from the UK representing the British Assistive Technology Association. He's the director of the British Assistive Technology Association. Mr. Myles, welcome on board. I met him at BET, and I explained to him about ABLE, and he was just very supportive. So thank you for coming.
Not at all, Maha. That was absolutely wonderful to be here. And like Jennison, I can now cross international speaker off my bucket list. I have been a teacher for special needs for 30 years. And then for 10 years, I was a local advisor in the county of Wiltshire, where I provided ICT equipment for a wide range of children. And I was working in primary, secondary, and special schools. So my background comes with experience. For the last 6 years, I have been running my own accessibility solutions company. And what I do is I work with families, and I try and solve people's problems with technology. So hopefully I can inform this conference from our experience. So our title is a pun, you've probably got it, towards a more able society using assistive technology. What is assistive technology? Because if you move around the world, there are lots of definitions about what it is. And from my point of view, a wide definition is really important. For instance, in Germany, they do not recognize neurodiversity as an assistive technology area. That is dyslexia and specific learning difficulties. In the States, everything is put into laws, and that's a good thing. And also in the UK, we have a mixture of laws that work for us. In the UK, we use this wide definition to help us focus on not a narrow way of working, but of a wider opportunity. There are many such definitions out there to suit, but this one, a range of devices that meet the needs of disabled users, is one that I particularly like, because it doesn't focus on the technology. And it talks about how we can develop a pedagogy that works in the situation that you are in. We're going to need flexible thinking and approaches in the 21st century. Where is assistive technology used? Absolutely everywhere by everyone, at any time where it meets needs. We used to talk of specialist hardware and software in the UK, and in fact, we were market leaders in the 90s for this area. BATA, the British Assistive Technology Association, comprises of suppliers, producers, consultants, and those with an interest in raising the awareness of assistive technology in our particular neck of the woods. But you know, with recent developments, mainstream software has become more assistive technology focused. For instance, we will talk about what some of the major players are doing. But all of that, by making it mainstream, means that it's going to help those with special needs. So, what is the picture in the UK? Well, AT, or assistive technology, is used in our teaching and learning. It has been that way ever since the late 90s, when huge amounts of money were put into particular hardware, and there are lessons to be learnt by that. It's also used as communication tools, particularly as communication aids, to enable non-verbal speakers speak using technology. It's also used in personal study as extra tools in the education toolbox. And it's been used in primary, secondary, higher education, further education, and universities, and is embedded into the curriculum, something that was noted earlier today about being used. think I'm going backwards and forwards and everywhere else. Thank you. I've fallen foul of the dreaded presentation failure. Well, research. In the UK in 2018, there was a large research project into how technology is being used in further and higher education. It makes interesting and considerable interest reading for you in the context here in the Lebanon from where you are, as many colleges and universities have invested in technology. Some of the key findings. On arriving to college, universities and colleges have made great use of technology to enable their students to be fully welcomed and integrated into their systems. And one of the key components is something that's been touched on earlier today, which is talking to the students. And so making the e-learning and the actual communication systems, collecting data from students has really been a key component that has been fed back into the system to enable those institutions to make the most of technology. No one size fits all is the message that has come back from that. Therefore, we have to have multi-solutions to the needs of those with special needs as well as students generally. Also, there was a movement in the late 90s for bringing your own device to work. That was a consideration of flexible working practices. In the 21st century, people don't go to a location so much. They work from home, particularly in the UK. With the internet, you can do most things remotely. And so one of the outcomes of that is bring your own device. Now, when I am an external lecturer to Bath Spa University, and when I was doing lecturing in the students 5 years ago, it was rare to see a mobile device at all. And now, everybody is using mobile devices, their own equipment, their own tools. And therefore, this is a nightmare for technicians. Have we got technicians in the room? Yes, we have. Because you have to set policies for these devices coming into your system. And therefore, it presents challenges. But students learn more effectively if they have a full range of learning tools that they can use. And the message that is clearly coming across today, which we have learned and which these findings have learned, is that assistive technology is good for everyone. 1 in 5 students use assistive or adaptive technologies in this study. And institutions should recognize that it's inclusive for all. And therefore, if you get it right for your disabled students and special needs students, you get it right for everybody, and everybody wins. And also in the UK, and it's been touched on again earlier, is that some students have been helped with their well-being. In the UK, we have issues with isolation and loneliness. Maybe these resonate with you here in Lebanon, but you may have unique issues that I don't know about. But the IT has been there to support and to enable those learners to communicate and to express and to make them feel involved by personalizing the communication to them, being named. It's very powerful. That makes the difference. What are the gains for using assistive technology? Well, there are many, and these are just some of them. If it helps overcome a learning barrier, that student's outcomes are going to be much, much better. The same applies in social barriers, removing misconceptions, something that is here. And I just want to allude to something I've noticed in that this meeting here, this conference has taken me back to the UK, where in the 90s, we had a similar debate. For instance, I was taught to train children who were educationally subnormal. That was the definition of my teacher training. What message is that giving to the students? and the children. Now we're moving forward. We now move from people with learning difficulties and disabilities to those with additional needs, which includes you and me. So the track is going. You're beginning this journey. It will take time and it will move on. But let's go to the other side of the argument. And that is the negative. Some of the disadvantages, even in the UK, are brought to us. For instance, cost is the biggest one. We have no money to buy new equipment. All that stuff went in the 90s. We bought interactive whiteboards. We bought the hardware, but we didn't know what to do with it, and it was never trained. This is the biggest mistake we made. So whatever you decide to do in Lebanon, invest in people. And my message today is people. You. You are here because you're interested. And here's a list of excuses that I have heard. Oh, it costs too much. We can't do that here. Training, haven't got time. Most important one is attitudes, which I think is big over here. And we heard from the people that came up here and shared their stories that people's expectations, even their own expectations, could limit them. And so we had to change attitudes. And knowledge, the biggest one, knowledge. Our beloved government, in its infinite wisdom, decided to abandon any centralised organisation that gave information about technology. It was called BATA, and now there is nowhere for schools to go to find information. Hence the importance of things like BATA to enable that information to get out there. And so we asked schools, where do you get training? How do you find this out? And most of them came back and said Twitter. Social media, because they haven't got time to get out and go to actually be given the time. And actually, that needs to change. So, what kind of assistive technology works? Well, working on the 1% principle that Jeremy was telling us about, text-to-speech is one of the most useful and has been proven in other cultures like India, where one particular school were using text-to-speech maybe for 3 times a week for half an hour, and all children, irrespective of their special needs, learnt to read. That is remarkable. And just one small 1% change can make a huge difference. And the converse to that is speech-to-text. That method allows the outcome of those with dyslexia and specific learning difficulties to be able to write just using their voice. And we have technologies that can do that. So let's look at some of them. Text-to-speech, I've just mentioned that research, but in packages like Microsoft Office now, and I've tested it here in Lebanon, and it works. Office 365 and Microsoft Outlook 2016, we're going to hear from Beth later, I hope, about what Microsoft are doing, actually has text-to-speech built in and enables the student to hear those words. And if that is one of the single motivating thing to do, then make sure that you've got that in place, because most of our secondary schools use Office 365, and whatever you think about Microsoft and how it does things, it's very powerful. Also, there is Text Help Read and Write. They're here, they're down the corridor, right at the end of the line of people. Go and talk to them, because their toolbar is a tool for inclusion in all settings where it's displayed there. And it's just a simple thing, a toolbar that allows you to research, to have voice input, all of those things, and enables the user to be helped. And ClaraSpeak. ClaraSpeak is another kind of toolbar. Now, if you want to learn more about these kind of things, come to the workshop tomorrow. That's my only advert. Okay. Speech to text. And then the market leader is Drag and Dictate Individual Professional. Not something I recommend in the classroom because of background noise, because of giving answers to other students, but is liberating for homework and for people that are doing that in a silent or a quieter library area. But also, there are technologies built into the tools anyway, which makes it so much easier. Siri and Google Assistant. Google Assistant is powerful because all of those last two things, Siri and Google Assistant, gives prompts to the user. And if you're blind, you need those prompts to know what it is doing. And simple little things can make huge changes. And what other technologies are there around? Yeah, let's go back one. What other technologies are around? Well, for Asperger's and autism, mind mapping software, like the bottom left, is key. Also, in exams, rather than having somebody reading the exams to you, you could use a tool like this. Its color is significant. It's called a scanning pen, and it allows the user to just scan text and have it read back to them. Very simple, very discreet, and easily accessible. The color orange denotes it, get your words out, denotes it as being exam recognized. And the company Scanning Pens has been around for a long time. This is not new technology, but its use and being used in exams is and will save lots of money on amanuensis. That is the provision of people. Yeah, how do you sign amanuensis? People who are helping to interpret the exam papers. And then there's mobile devices, and it benefits all of us. That's the message in the top right. I just want to demonstrate one to you. It's called Claro Scan Pen. It's an app, and it works on your mobile phone. I won't be doing a demo. You never do demos live in a context like this. We're just going to watch a short video, and it does come loud, believe me. What it is, we just pull our fingers across the page.
Which two of these sentences are commands? Leave the building by the nearest exit. Ask at reception for directions to the main hall.
That's all it does. And you can have the text read back to you as a whole, but it means that any printed document can be read back to you. Any printed document. Now, you're going to ask me, is it in Arabic? I don't know. But I could find out for you. Let's move on. This next one is having your lectures recorded. I'll let them play it, okay? It'll tell you what it does.
This is Sonosant Recorder, our free iOS app for recording and annotating lectures. You can use it on an iPhone, iPod or iPad, and we have an Android version in the works. The app is really very simple to use. Hit this button and the app starts to record. As you can see, we visualize each phrase as it is being spoken. We've gone to extra lengths to make sure the sound quality is top-notch. Use this in class to record your lecture. When you hear something you want to make a note of, you can press one of these colour buttons to highlight the speech with that colour, just like using a highlighter pen. You can even scroll back and highlight audio that has already been recorded. You often don't know something is important straight away. Using the colour buttons, you can add layers of meaning to the recording, annotating things that are important, things you need to come back to, or things that you didn't understand. Whenever the lecture slide changes, press this button to break your recording into sections. Lecturers often make their slides available to students, and later we can import these PowerPoint or PDF slides and match the recording to each slide. Of course, you can also type notes alongside your audio, but we recommend that students do not do this if it will distract them from concentrating on their lecture. You can also use...
I just switched that off at that point because it goes on to explain how it can be transferred. But this encourages active listening. One of the major problems for children and even us as adults is that I've probably been going, how many minutes? And I have to be an exceptionally good speaker to keep your attention. So this encourages active listening. Active listening where you find what is most important. So it's actually training the students as well as being a tool. Now in practice, you wouldn't want to use all of that in every lecture. You could be spending hours. That's not practical. So you might use it for take-homes or things that are just the most important thing. So I'd recommend that. And let's consider some of the alternative means of input for some of the more physical, cognitive, and other disabilities. Sorry, it's so small at the top left, but that is an eye gaze system. For those who haven't got use of their hands, and you just look at the computer, and that is your mouse control, and you can access the computer at any point. The device next to it, looks like a long thin thing, is a motion sensor. It's called LEAP, and it enables those with muscle wasting diseases who cannot press things because they haven't got the muscle power to actually control the computer through gesture and movement. Connect is another tool. We'll talk about that. And then we have direct touch, most important for profound multiple learning difficulties and for cerebral palsy. The next picture next to it with a guy wearing a head kit is the next wave, brain waves. Being able to control the computer by thought. This isn't science fiction, this is science fact. And so we'd be looking at unlocking children with locked-in syndrome. The most complex needs on the planet can be accessed by technology. Then we have things that have been around for years. Switches for cerebral palsy and physical disability and profound and multiple learning difficulties, removing the need for the keyboard. And then for mild cerebral palsy and those who can actually move their hands and can control a joystick, there is a joystick and an on-screen keyboard. Together, that enables the child to record. And then there's assistive technology in the home. Mention that broad definition. And so we have smart speakers. And I just want to tell you a very short case study. A totally blind lady. I work for a charity called AbilityNet, and we help disabled people use the technology. She was not only blind, but she'd lost mobility and through vasculitis, which is a rare condition, the use of her hands. Now, anybody who's blind knows that their hands are the most important tool that they have. Consequently, she was depressed and had tried to commit suicide 4 times. Do you know what saved her? £49 in English money and Echo Dot. Because she could listen to music that she likes, she could access books, and she could listen and be entertained with quizzes. And she uses it constantly. These kind of technologies are coming in. And then there's healthcare. Everybody remember the film Big Hero 6? It may be a joke, but it's not, because we're going to see great revolution. Gentleman from the EU, Roberto, he mentioned to us about the fact that we've got an aging population. And what are we going to do to help these people? We're not going to have the money or the facilities. We're going to have to use technology and the appropriate use of technology. So a robot that can assist you. And then there are remote surgeries that can be taken place using the Connect. And surgeons on the battlefield are being healed or worked on by somebody somewhere else. Isn't it amazing what technology can do? And then there's prosthetics and mobility. 3D printers can produce body parts. And there are ranges of things that can be met by that need. But also, we could have smart wheelchairs which work on upper body movement. So controlling it becomes a matter of movement. You can have chairs that lift you up into an upright position so that you're eyeball to eyeball. How many times do we meet people with wheelchairs and we speak to the carer or the person who's pushing them? We don't get down to the level of the disabled person and speak to them directly. We used to call it, does he take sugar syndrome? You know, because the person themselves is in a wheelchair. He's not brain dead. He just is in a wheelchair. And then what of the future? Well, the future is here, and the future is artificial intelligence and the impact that that's going to have. And it already is. For instance, the bottom left item is an Orcam reader, My Eye reader. And this is helping a lady I know who has macular degeneration. That means an eye condition. And it means that she is an author and she can't read her own research for the book she is writing. This device, which fits on her glasses, you point and it reads everything in front of you. She is now able to read her own research and can finish the book. She's in her mid-80s. So we have a lot there. And then my personal favourite, because I can't wait to see how this works in Beirut. I've only been here one day, but I know that getting across a road, a red light is a suggestion, not mandatory. And so I nearly got myself killed just crossing across. Yeah, you're smiling. But driverless cars means that disabled people now can have things the way they want them. And it is already being developed. Uber are thinking of disability and how that works. And particularly dog-friendly cabs. You know, a disabled person may have a guide dog, or they may have a friendly dog, and they need access to that. Of course, it's important that we have that, but I would love it to test drive here in this country. And then there's the future in terms of what our attitudes are and how that works. You know, if you're successfully introducing something, yeah, you're going to need money and finance, but let's target it to make a big difference, not the swanky stuff. Our education minister wants our education people to go into artificial and augmented reality. Great, but it's the interactive whiteboard 2020. It really isn't going to solve the problem. The problem that's going to get solved is text-to-speech, because that will liberate hundreds and thousands of people as well as making individual solutions. So we need the right attitude. We need the right approach. We need the right strategy, because that's what's going to win the day, to address the challenges and ethics of this technology will bring. It will take an awful lot of persuasion to actually get people to go in a driverless car. It will happen, though. Can we afford not to? We want change. We want to make change. And I'm a big DC comic fan as well as anything sci-fi. And so it says they're agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, I think you and me are agents of change. We want to see that happen. And what I want is a more productive workforce, and I want those attitudes challenged and brought into focus. Well, it only leaves for me to say, and I really have no idea how long I've gone because I forgot to press my stopwatch, so I really hope I haven't taken up too much time. My apologies. Thank you.
And now I would like to welcome Mr. Eyfan Kesken, from a Teacher Engagement Manager from Microsoft.
Duygu merhaba, bırak. İstediğin sorumu ekran bulabilirsin. Bırak, sevgiler. İskelet.
Microsoft Erişilebilirlik Ekibi test yöneticisiyim. Microsoft Erişilebilirlik Ekibi olarak engellilerin sosyal çalışma ve eğitim hayatını teknolojiyle değiştirmek üzerine yola çıktık. Her geçen gün eğitimde sınırlar kalkıyor. Gören görmeyen birlikte eşit bir şekilde eğitim almaya başladılar. Defter kalem ortadan kalktığı, one to one birlikte çalışabildikleri erişilebilir bir dünya oluşuyor.
Ben Microsoft'ta çalışan bir eğitimciyim. Mühendis değilim, eğitimciyim. Ve Microsoft olarak biz farklılaştırılmış ve bireyselleştirilmiş platformlarda çalışma ihtiyacı duyan öğrencileri yetiştirecek eğitmenleri eğitiyoruz.
Türkiye'nin dört bir bölgesinden görme engelli öğrencinin matematik ile ilgili eksiklerin olduğunu tespit ettim. Bu anlamda onların yanına gidebilmem mümkün değil ama onlara ulaşabilirim. Onlara da uzaktan eğitim ile, yani Microsoft Skype'ın verdiği olanaklardan faydalanarak ulaştım.
Hale Hoca ile birlikte Microsoft öğrenim araçlarını kullanarak yaklaşık 3 senedir birlikte çalışıyoruz uzaktan eğitimde. Ve aslında ben Bursa'da yaşıyorum. Hale Hoca farklı şehirde, bizimle birlikte çalışan herkes farklı şehirde ve aslında Microsoft'un bu online'daki öğrenim araçlarının sayesinde Türkiye'nin her yerinden insanlar sınava hazırlanabiliyor.
Hazırlık sürecinde uzaktan eğitim beni destekledi. Yani olmasaydı birçok soruyu çözememiş olacaktım. Hale Hoca'nın sesiyle ya da işte başka dokümanlarla bunu tamamen internet ortamında Teams gibi araçlar üzerinde uygulama fırsatı buldum.
Ben 3 yıldır görmüyorum, 15 yıl boyunca görüyordum. O zamanki yaşantıma ve şu anki yaşantım arasında çok şey değişti. Mesela eskiden bir kağıda göz gezdirmem ya da bir test çözmem çok kolayken şu an dinleyerek o soruyu çözmek açıkçası zor oluyor.
Skype'da eğitimler aslında bana örgün eğitimin sunduğu olanakların hepsini sunuyordu. Ama bir eksiklik vardı. O eksiklik sınıfın dışında da çıktıktan sonra devam eden öğrenmeydi. Teams'te bunu yakaladım diyebilirim.
Microsoft'un eğitim teknolojilerini kullanarak aslında istediğim bilgiye istediğim yerden anlık olarak ulaşabiliyorum. Bir okul, sınıf, derslikten bağımsız istediğim her yerde derse katılabiliyorum. Egzersizlerimi yapabiliyorum, çalışmalarımı yapabiliyorum. Hocama sorularımı gönderebiliyorum ve soruların cevaplarına ulaşabiliyorum. Derslere katılabiliyorum. Dolayısıyla bu benim daha özgür bir şekilde öğrenmemi destekliyor.
Ben çok zor bir öğrencilik yaşadım. Çünkü tek tek bütün kitapları taramam ve yağ kabartmaya yazmam gerekiyordu. Ama bugünkü öğrenciler gören yaşıtlarıyla birlikte aynı bilgisayar üzerinden, aynı teknoloji, aynı ofis programları üzerinden çalışma yapabiliyorlar. O yüzden eğitim hayatları çok daha erişilebilir, çok daha kolay.
Dijital ortam aslında onlara bambaşka bir dünya sunuyor. Biz yeter ki onlara ulaşılabilir kılalım, erişilebilir kılalım, kolaylıklar sağlayalım. Bu ortamı onlara sunalım, eğitim öğretim ortamını. Onlar bu ortamdan nasıl faydalanacağını keşfetsinler. Herhangi bir telefondan, tabletten ya da bilgisayardan istediğim anda, istediğim materyallere erişmek, bunu şu an yapabiliyor olmak benim için çok önemli. 10 yıl öncesinde bulunduğumuz nokta şu andan çok uzak, çok ayrı bir yerde. Ve ben geleceğin daha yeni, daha güzel, daha umut dolu şeyler getireceğine inanıyorum.
Microsoft 2020 Kalkınma Planı kapsamında görme engelli bireylerin eğitim öğretim süreçlerine dahil edilmesi ve bu sürecin sürdürülebilir bir şekilde devam edebilmesi noktasında önemli bir işbirliği sağladık. Bizim için önemi bu etkinliğin Microsoft teknolojilerinin görme engelli bireyler tarafından eğitim öğretim sürecinde etkin ve verimli bir şekilde kullanılmasını sağlamak ve devamında gerekli ölçeklendirmelerin sağlanması ve yüz yüze eğitimlerle daha fazla eğitici eğitmenine bu eğitimleri vererek hedefimize ulaşmayı amaçlıyoruz.
Selam Duygu. Ayşe'nin kedisi yavrulamış. Yavrulara yuva arıyoruz. MS Türkiye Social Club ile duyuruyu paylaşsana. Görsel açıklama. Yerde yatmış anne kedi yavrularını emziriyor. Çok tatlı değiller. Yard number 128522. İyi çalışmalar.
Balık vermeyin, balık tutmasını da öğretmeyin. Balık endüstrisinde devrim yaratacak, engellilerin hayatını kolaylaştıracak teknolojik çalışmalar yapın.
Allow me to introduce myself. I worked for Microsoft for 5 years as a teacher engagement manager. I'm Eyüpan Keskin. I'm a psychology and opera major working in the tech industry, and I've been with the Microsoft Turkey education team for 4 years now, working with the visually impaired learners, working with hearing impaired individuals. Thank you so much. But is my opera voice helping out? Okay, great. Thank you. So I might skip on that, but. So here today I wanted to talk a little bit about the kind of technologies, tools and services that we offer in our pursuit to offer inclusive and accessible teaching and learning experiences to individuals which are within formal education system or not. And with that, there are some statistics that have been covered today, and I wanted to start us off by reminding us of some facts out there that Microsoft Research relies on to drive our technologies, tools, and services. And it shouldn't, strike you as a novel finding, perhaps, that almost 50% of our time is lost trying to find the right set of technology to be used in the classroom, and it's a worldwide shared reality that today our teachers are facing. And also, we need to be accounting for diverse learning needs, not just special learning needs, but diverse learning needs. And that includes people who read or write at different speeds. That includes English as a second language speakers or foreign speakers. That includes people with specialized learning needs in terms of disabilities and impairments, which have been covered by speakers who took the floor today early on. And hence, the role of technology coming into the picture as an enabler, as a tool that gets everybody hopefully on the same page and promotes independent learning, promotes independent creative thinking, and promotes integration into the society in a meaningful and a self-dependent way. With that, I wanted to draw your attention to a freely available empiric evidence that Microsoft spent years working with more than 1,500 school leaders, ministries, and system leaders, as well as teachers worldwide with academics and policymakers, called Class of 2030 report. Can I have a share of hands as to who have heard about this research very quickly? Brilliant. I'm so happy. I'm not trying to get the energy levels up by asking this question because we have worked with all ministries and system leaders in the world based on failed one-to-one digital implementation strategies across the universe to learn from our mistakes, to learn how we not start with the technology piece, but start with the people piece, policy making, systematic change for digital transformation, investing in people, building capacity, teacher professional development, as well as school leader vision changing, and how do we measure outcomes, whether it's curriculum, I will switch to, yep, okay. Well, whether it's curriculum framework outcomes or whether it's objectives, any objectives, whether it's productivity of school management, etc., etc. So we need to have a holistic view to drive systematic change and manage that new culture of transformation. And that includes, as part of its pieces, a big chunk around accessibility and inclusion. Let me build up on that. Microsoft Education Transformation Framework, probably, is there anyone who has heard about this as well? No, that's awesome. Okay, brilliant, thank you, sir. Microsoft Education Transformation Framework is a differentiator, we believe, that sets us apart from other tech vendors out there globally, because it's a holistic and systematic view of how we seek to drive digital transformation at any level, whether it's system level, whether it's school leader level, or whether it's at the national level. So it is comprised of 4 quadrants. 1, leadership and policy. What is the vision? What education philosophy is it that we're trying to achieve? And what allegiances, partnerships that we ought to be making? And how do we measure outcomes? How do we evaluate our success and edit? And finally, how do we make sure that the measures that we put in place are accessible and it promotes inclusive learning environments, inclusive spaces for growth? And the second quadrant really appeals to teaching and learning. How do we modernize our curriculum? How do we modernize our teacher PD efforts? How do we assess learning outcomes? And how do we make sure that our technology choice promotes that learning environment and space? And do we offer immersive experiences for better learning outcomes and for better participation and involvement that speaks to retention and cognitive skills? And then we look about where technology, the 10% of digital transformation and change is only technology, and that's where in the last 2 quadrants it's the intelligent campuses and technology blueprint. Is our campuses safe? Are our campuses safe? Are they smart? Are they IoT-based driven to collect data, to analyze data, to give us insight as to how we want to go about managing our campuses so that we can make use of data and not treat it as a static colosseum of nonsense that doesn't have any impact on our business, on our teaching and learning, etc. And finally, what is the technology that is being used by personal learners, by administrative staff, by faculty, etc., etc. So I just wanted to throw it out there, and it's freely available at every level, at every stakeholder that makes up the transformation cycle can learn from that. And it relies on years of research based on academics, policymakers, and system leaders. It has been touched on, but Microsoft's vision of accessibility and inclusion really extends across a number of pillars which have been covered by speakers before me. And it covers, whether they're cognitive disorders, whether it's auditory or visual multisensory disorders, or whether it's differences in our reading and cognitive skills and abilities. It doesn't matter. Technology has to be comprehensive in addressing all special needs, so that we can talk about a real inclusivity and real access to equity and equality. Moving forward. This has been talked about. Microsoft invests big time in AI, helping us drive digital transformation and leading to better teaching and learning outcomes, but also inclusion of people with special needs to help them on their individual, civic, personal lives, whether it's conversion of visual cues to auditory ones, of text, of speech, of any form factor, really, is processed by the power of cloud compute that Microsoft invests billions of dollars every year to make this technology accessible. And I want to point out something. This technology you see, which is available as part of our mobile lifestyle for learners, for workers, for individuals in modern society, is relying on your feedback. It's just a click apart. You click on Give Feedback on any Microsoft product, or you reach out to Microsoft Accessibility Help Desk, and you are connected to a global engineer who will take your feedback, incorporate it, and release the update feature in the next life cycle. And we're talking about 3 months or 6 month installments that come up as part of the cascade. So it really is real, and you are really heard when you reach out to us and say, hey, this isn't working. So please let us know what's not working so that we can fix it. All right, so I've covered the kind of form factors that our AI technology is able to address. We're not saying it's all inclusive. That would be a false statement. But we are doing our best to invest in all form factors. And again, your feedback is critical to help us extend our library of form factors to better help you. I just wanted to share this social media shout out to say, after 15 years, it's a moment of epiphany for an individual whose life was transformed based on our technology. Because based on our technology. So hence, when we are investing in AI to make it accessible for you, to have it freely available, to be incorporated into our daily lives, no matter what disability or impairment we've got or special need that we have. And we've covered the video case study that I just shared with you based on our experience as Microsoft Turkey, whereby we work with the National Association of the Visually Impaired Learners, who touches on thousands of individuals with visual impairment, not just in the formal education space, but also in any industry, because we did trainer trainings to scale our efforts, and they, for the first time, get to try most of our tools and services, some of which they found not so accessible, but there was lots of learnings. They preferred JAWS as opposed to Windows Narrator. They preferred, JAWS again instead of Immersive Reader. But then there were times like alternative edit text, whereby a visual and sensory experience was turned into a meaningful one through the use of technology, whereby visual cues were translated into auditory ones, and hence we were able to paint a picture. So it's as easy as that. It works in Outlook, your day-to-day mail and time calendar management tool. It works on Word that you're familiar with to annotate a bibliography. It works on Windows Narrator on Edge, your browser, which is a lot faster than Internet Explorer and a lot secure. You can take annotations on it. There's a lot of tools and services that we offer, and they all have accessibility features incorporated into the design for you to make it accessible for you. And again, you hit the plus button to give feedback. If a feature isn't there, please let us know. I also wanted to drive some awareness around the kind of literature that is out there with Microsoft on dyslexia and attention deficit disorder that is proven by scientific research to lead to better learning outcomes. Everything we design at Microsoft, it's based on empirical evidence that technology is leading to better learning outcomes in STEM. It's leading to better social lives with increased productivity and more comfortable integration into the society. And for example, I'm very happy to note that between boys and girls' reading and writing ability, the use of OneNote takes guys' speed of writing and efficiency of writing to the same level as girls. Girls are much better at writing than boys in linear lines. I see some nods in the crowd from gentlemen who would struggle with handwriting. There you go. It's as easy as that. And my dad would say, I would get my hand slapped by my teacher because I'm a left-handed person and I would be forced to write using my right hand. So just small examples that it's in our day-to-day life and our technology is a barrier remover. Yeah? And also things like the use of a digital stylus pen on any device leads to more than 30% better learning outcomes in STEM-related disciplines. I mean, abstract knowledge construction, understanding, it relies on some visualization component. And we're able to do that with our technology, whether it's a data model using Python, where you, using our MOOC-based e-learning platforms, you visualize and get feedback on Azure Jupyter Notebook instances, which are free. And it's free for all students for $100. You get to do your lab exercise. Or whether it's through a desktop, you need to visualize. And a digital stylus pen, is key to better learning outcomes. So if you want to implement a digital one-to-one strategy, make sure that there's a digital stylus pen. Yeah? Otherwise, your investment in that hardware is lost. Yeah? My very point with this slide was we invest in not only teacher training or the technology itself, but also there's a free library of courses that are available to all teachers on Microsoft Educator Community called MEC. And there's a curriculum out there for dyslexia. It serves two main goals. One, drive awareness around the piece. And second is instructive and didactic to help teachers integrate technology for better learning outcomes and for more inclusive and accessible experiences with 1 out of 10 students who suffer from some element of attention deficit disorder or dyslexia. And it is proven that we can increase literacy and numeracy by up to 30% again when we are leveraging an inclusive and accessible reading or writing tool like OneNote or ReadAloud or Immersive Reader. So here's some examples of tools and services that we got, which are now released and publicly available and are all free, that help. It's called ReadAloud and Immersive Reader. It actually enlarges the text, and you can vary the speed of reading to your level of literacy, and then you are able to color code text. And it's tremendously helpful, a multi-sensory embodied learning experience that drives better learning outcomes. So I will skim through these just to give you some taste as to what kind of technology and tools that we've got. So for example, it is intentionally tinted in green, an accent of green, as it helps with dyslexia and attention deficit disorder to reorganize information based on a multisensory experience with color coding or syllabalization. Yeah? And it's mobily available. It's so important. We're a platform company. We're no longer, oh, if you're with Google, life, is tough for you, and sorry, tough luck. No, if you're on an Android device, you are mobile, and you're a mobile learner, you're a mobile productive person, and you need to get the best technology that is out there. And I'm happy to share with you that all your Android devices are now accessible with Office 365. So your mobile cloud productivity suite. And there is some Mac content made by Dyslexia. It's called. Please check it out and tell us what you think. All right, some capabilities that I want to share that it's multiple forms, multisensory features are all incorporated. There's an accessibility checker. I'm running out of time, so I'll just say that we got a number of features that are coming, such as, for math, STEM learning, we got math equations that could be read aloud, that help with mathematical understanding of abstract concepts, which are available on Mac. So not just Android, but Apple devices as well. And things like how more inclusivity comes to PowerPoint with caption reading, read aloud. You think that PowerPoint is your familiar old tool, but guess what? There are a lot of accessibility features that are built in to make it even more accessible and inclusive. Yeah? And Teams, your new digital hub for collaboration, communication, video conferencing, for content management, feedback sharing, remote learning scenarios, for LMS integration, gradebooks integration, make coding with Microsoft. Everything you can manage in one place for your daily calendar management, productivity, collaboration, all 21st century skills that you need to be practicing and you get to use every day at work. It all starts here as mobile and modern learners and educators and school leaders and admin staff. You can work on Teams. And it's for free with OfficeAOne, which is our faculty and student offering for online functionality. All you need is your institution to have an Office tenant, and you can, using your email, get it for free. Yeah? And finally, I would like to close by saying, here's some few free things that you can try that I want to leave you with. There's some more teacher PD content that I'll share in the next 2 slides. But this is the free stuff that you can do, whether it's to take a picture of a text and then transform it, to take the picture of an image and then translate it to a multi-sensory different experience that is accessible for you no matter what your learning needs are. There's OneNote Learning Tools. Learning Tools is the name of collective umbrella term that we give it to accessibility features. It's across all Office apps, and there's more stuff to come. And there is how these learning tools lead to better learning outcomes. Research is out there too. If you're looking as an educator, or for those educators in your audience, please go to Microsoft Educator community, create your profile, and check this literature out for integration, free integration of these technologies into your classroom. And finally, here on the Mac again, you can check the sites, and I'll be sure to share the deck with the organization. A list of resources, whether webinars or face-to-face training, boot camps, or educator-created content for educators or school leaders to drive change around accessibility and inclusion, some resources for integration. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much to ABLE and American University of Beirut for this occasion. Thank you.
So now we're going to use technology to access Dr. Larson's presentation. Dr. Fredrick Larson, he's the CTO and founder of Readspeaker. He's going to be presenting online. First, we're going to see the presentation, and then we're going to have the opportunity to ask him questions. So let's listen to Dr. Fredrick online.
Hello. Hello everyone, I'm Fredrick Larson and I'm CTO of Readspeaker, and I will talk about computer innovations for non-visual access. It's through my own ICT journey. So what will I talk about then? Well, first of all I will say a bit more about me. I will also then look into different screen reader models, theoretical models that you can use to describe screen readers. And I will also take a look at other tools and innovative ideas for accessibility. We should also talk about what cloud can do for accessibility and screen readers. And of course some conclusion. So who am I then? I'm CTO and co-founder of Readspeaker, and a company that I was and founded 2000 together with some other people. I am also a Master of Science in Engineering Physics since 1995, and I also have a Licentiate of Engineering degree in Computer Systems that I also graduated 2000. I also work a little bit extra with the Swedish Braille Authority as a chairman there, and I also participated a lot in ISO standardization working group of different kinds. But I think the most important thing for this presentation is that I am a non-visual computer user since 85 or maybe 86. Okay, so what theoretical models do we have for describing screen readers? Yeah, I think the first one is the one that uses access to alternative representation of the screen, for example the frame buffer model. The next one is the one that build alternative representations of the screen. They create these so-called off-screen models. And then we have a third category, which we can call pluggable representation. It differs between the logic and the presentation of the different graphical elements. And finally, I also think we have the focus and event-driven ones, where the user navigates around in the application, and then there are APIs that the screen reader can use to gain information about surrounding components. So to the first model then, the one that accesses alternative representation. It's the old MS-DOS based ones mainly that access the frame buffer, and they sent it to synthetic speech or produced Braille from it. That was the first one that I encountered, in fact. And of course, the big advantage is it was very fast and very reactive. It was also the case that it was almost full access to the same applications as everyone else used back then in the 80s. And the layout was preserved to a very great extent. There were the same number of columns in each row, and you could have exactly the same on your Braille display, and always a fixed number of rows on the screen, etc. And there was a use of an activation key, so you press the key on your keypad and then you could use the full keyboard for navigating the screen reader, since it has focused until you press the inactivation key, so to speak. But there were of course also some drawbacks. The applications that was inaccessible was really inaccessible, because there were applications that used pure graphics and they couldn't be read at all. And the model, of course, requires a text-based way of working, and text environments are not that much used today. And to summarize my personal experience here, I used it with my Swedish formant synthesis, the very robotic ones, you know, and it helped me through the 7th and 8th and 9th year in school. I'd also used it with Braille from 1990s when I started the university studies, and that was the only way then that I could access the big mainframe computers like Sun OS, VAX, DEC stations, etc. They couldn't be accessed in any other way. I also use them a lot in Linux text-based environment. I started with that end 90s or something. I in fact also wrote my own DOS-based screen reader in assembly as a hobby project 91 because I thought existing ones had some problems that needed to be solved. That was fun, but a long time ago. The next ones, type of screen readers, are the ones that build the alternative representations of screen model. I think that is maybe the one that more people here in the audience has used. It's the early MS Windows based ones until 2005 maybe, or something. And of course the big advantage was that we could move on to the same environment as all other people started to use then in the mid-90s. The off-screen model made it possible to get kind of a picture at least of what was on the screen. It's also the case that you could use more modern services, and that's of course what you want to do. The activation key was taken away. Instead there was a command prefix key, so you always had the keyboard focused at the application, which led to maybe some more cumbersome command to learn. It was slower than text-based. It was more unreliable, unfortunately. There was also more applications that were not fully accessible, so it was more difficult to say what can I use and what can I not use. And it was also difficult to mix with some extra provided alternative representation. For example, I remember when surfing the web with Internet Explorer, I couldn't see the complete image descriptions because they were cut off, simply because they didn't fit the layout on the image on the screen, for example. And talking about layout is almost never preserved with these kind of screen readers, which is difficult then if you want to work with indentation and tables, etc. And regarding my personal experience here, I did not use these kind a lot. That's mainly because we were using X Windows on my university institution department there, so I had not much to do with Microsoft Windows then. And honestly, it was too slow and unreliable to be able to keep up with a good working performance, honestly. But I tried to keep in touch with them, so I studied them quite a lot to hold courses for other people with low sight and blind, so I could help out with also customizing applications. The third type is the one that I think is maybe most interesting. It's the one that works with the pluggable representation concept. So essentially they replace the graphical representation of a component and its interaction with an alternative scenario. And the good thing here is it becomes very flexible and fast to use since you stay in the text environment. And you can, as a non-visual user, you could continue to use, you could stay text-based and continue to use modern technologies, which of course is great. But they were very special, so they were hard to develop and hard to maintain, because if there were new graphical components showing up in the original system, you needed to release a new version essentially. And they were of course also somewhat difficult to install, since it required that the users ran with special configurations in the computer, etc. And layout is of course not preserved at all, which of course can be a bad thing in certain applications. So personally here we have some interesting experience. I think Ultrasonics was a screen reader made for the big Unix X Windows systems. It never really took off, unfortunately. We also had this GTK for curses, which made it possible to run a lot of graphical applications text-based. And Java, Sun, they based the complete frameworks on the pluggable look and feel, so you could replace and have your own window toolkit and make Java applications really accessible. I also think one can count text-based browsers and viewers, so one like Emacs and the old-time Linux browser to this kind, because they give you alternative representations of the document content, for example. I was a researcher back then, mid-90s, and needed to read papers, and they were in PostScript, so I could reach them electronically, but not in an accessible format at that time. So I remember the Virtual Paper project. They had an excellent text extraction mechanism from PostScript, so it was like a better OCR, so I could handle the situation thanks to that one. I also wrote my own text extraction from PostScript. I also think the Web Accessibility Initiative ARIA markup can be mentioned here, because it also provides for alternative ways of showing the components and interacting with them. So the last kind of screen readers are the one that I called focus and event driven. They are the ones that you found now in later Windows installers, and the screen readers that you have integrated into the operating systems today, like Chrome OS, Android, Apple, etc. I also think the Web Initiative ARIA markup can be mentioned here as well. It's some kind of alternative API to get information about components, roles, and behaviors. And the advantages is, of course, that these APIs could make a screen reader less tied to a certain platform. You have the same API, for example, and you can access them from different browsers or devices. Application developers provide accessibility information, so it is something that they need to think about from beginning when designing services and applications. But it was almost impossible to do a review of the screen, because there is no off-screen model, so you cannot create this picture of what is where on the screen. It relies on you navigating around in the application, and you don't really know where to navigate, and you don't know what is there until you find it, etc. And layout is never preserved. It's also the case that there is lack of standards for these APIs, so it's not as platform independent as was planned, maybe. So personally, I used smartphones since around 2005, these old Nokia screen readers. But I must say, I think Apple really made it around 2014 or something, maybe a bit earlier. That really was a difference. But unfortunately, it's still the case that math and complex graphics cannot be accessible in a very nice way with any screen reader so far. So what other tools do we have then for accessibility? Yeah, today we have a lot of browser plugins and alternative viewers and applications and website-specific add-ons, etc. And the advantage is, of course, that you can learn the accessibility you need and pay for the accessibility you need, because you don't need to learn a complete set of screen reader commands to do things. I also think that tools can be tailor-made for each situation in a nice way. And more people get aware of accessibility when you see these things around, and they start to think, more brains start to think. That's of course also can have some advantages, because it means to need to educate people a lot in accessibility, since more people are in it. And you sometimes also you get a fragmented view of a user's full access situation, simply because you have accessibility to different parts, but not to the complete situation. So personally, I think these services may be valuable as a screen reader user as well. They may provide me with extra functionality, for example, the Facebook image descriptions, for example. So, which innovations did I do at Readspeaker then? Well, we made the first accessibility that was installed on the web services that the customer, I would say. So it became part of the service. So it was a talking web interface, and we also made a telephony interface for web and mail back in the times. We used regular expressions, which is an advanced technique for matching phrases, so you could get better pronunciation dictionaries instead of just word by word. And we had XSLT for rewriting XML, which made it possible to do really advanced website-specific customizations. We also relied a lot on heavy math to do good tagging of PDF documents automatically, for example. So what could cloud do for screen readers and how could they benefit? Well, first, I think that there could be much more collaboration and sharing. For example, image descriptions of different kinds and audio descriptions. We had these cloud capture resolving services that could help us with accessibility, for example, that existed for some years ago. And there could be central databases with image and audio descriptions, and screen readers could have a platform for sharing the application-specific customizations. And in fact, I think there could be website-specific customizations enabled on the fly when whilst you're surfing around. So how can we use all these AI and DNN techniques then? Well, we see them in the Facebook automatic image description, photo description. We have these Seeing Eye and TapTapSee applications that really make interesting things with the photo recognition. OCR will become much stronger. I also think that we should use AI techniques to handle text extraction from documents, and also finding out the roles of different form elements, for example, where you don't have any labels and the layout tells the role of the form. So now for some conclusions. Well, I think accessibility moves from reactivity, where screen reader developers need to adapt to what has already happened, to proactivity, where the operating systems and applications included from beginning. Of course, there is issues if accessibility work gets too little resources. Then I also think that special software continues to be important, like text-based and command line driven ones. You need to use alternative software now and then because it's very efficient, even though you become a little bit isolated. And graphical environments are not really convenient if they are too complex. That's unfortunately how it is. However, I still think that existing screen readers do not really use the technology to full potential. We don't have XSLT and regular expressions yet in screen readers, for example. Many of them does not handle the complete ARIA markup, and they don't use the CSS style sheets for Braille and audio, for example. And also it's a case that they don't really do automatic text extraction to the full potential, I think. Maybe we could also use the mouse pad to have the gestures like we have in the smartphones, instead of having it just being in the way when you operate a screen reader. And I also think that cloud technologies and AI could be used more. For example, grammar specifically tied to websites, etc. So thank you, and sorry for using a little bit too much of my devoted time.
Hi everyone. It was supposedly that Dr. Larson would be for Q&A questions, but I think we have lost connection with him. I'm sorry for that. I just would like to add on Dr. Larson's presentation that Readspeaker is a text-to-speech solution. It basically speaks more than 40 languages, including English, French, and Arabic. We'll be here tomorrow for a workshop at 10:30 in OSB 333. It's going to be about disability and accessibility in simple words. And it's going to be a very useful workshop to help you know how to build an accessible website in a simple way. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, AUB. Thank you, Ma.